himself into slavery, he could pay the lien off and restore the property, which is what Boaz did. But faith was the individual's responsibility. The person had to have faith in that kinsman redeemer, that this work could be done for them. Ruth had faith that Boaz's promise to her was going to be fulfilled, right? She was so excited after what Boaz said, yes, I will do this thing for you. She ran back to Naomi and she said, we have found a redeemer. He's going to save us. Don't worry. This little bit of food I brought that I've gleaned from the field, there's going to be more. You know, the whole thing of the kinsman redeemer is typified in that story of Ruth. So Boaz restored all of her rights that she was potentially ready to lose. Let's look at the qualifications of a kinsman redeemer. He must be near relative, the closest relative that could be found. The near kinsman could redeem the poor relative from slavery by paying the required debt if he had sufficient financial resources. If a person was murdered, it was the responsibility of the near kinsman to avenge the death of the individual by watching for and bringing the murderer to justice. Property that had been sold could be redeemed by the near kinsman if he paid the relative what was owed against it. Now, consider the condition of Adam. What happened to him when he took that piece of fruit and ate it? He sold himself into slavery. Satan killed him, didn't he? The promise God gave was, in the day that you eat that fruit, you will surely die. And who brought about the fall? Satan. So who is it that was responsible for Adam's death? Satan. He is the murderer. Christ said Satan is a murderer from the beginning. What else did Adam lose that day? Property. He lost his property rights. Innocence. Yeah, he lost his innocence, but I'm thinking of context here with the kinsman redeemer. He lost the earth. He lost his dominion over this world, and Satan is now king of this property. Adam sold it to him for that piece of fruit. Joyce?
Did Satan's dominion end at the cross?
No, he still has control of this world, except for that handful of people that listen to God. This world would not be given back until after the millennium. The three things that Adam did: he lost his life, he lost his dominion, and he enslaved himself to Satan. Those are the 3 points that the kinsman redeemer deals with, right? The kinsman redeemer must be the near relative, the closest living relative to the person needing redemption, and the near kinsman had to have sufficient resources to pay the debt, and he had to be able to bring the murderer to justice.
The point is, there's not only one person that can do that.
That's right. That's my point. So, for Christ to be our kinsman redeemer, he must meet these 3 requirements. Did he do it?
Yes.
How did he do it? This is an extremely important concept. The kinsman redeemer is a fundamental principle to Bible understanding, and I don't think that very many people know about it. It's not taught, no. Rick?
It says also the fact that in the fall, Adam brought down all of his prodigy. There were none that were born before the fall. If they had, there would still have been a sinless bloodline.
That's right.
And so thus, you had to go back behind Adam to get the one who made Adam to take his place at Calvary. And thus the Creator.
Well, not exactly. Christ had to come and save that which was lost.
Yes.
Fallen man is what was lost,
Yes.
not unfallen man.
Yes.
So, Alex used to quote from Harry Johnson's dissertation on the nature of Christ, that which Christ has not become, he has not redeemed. In other words, what he has not assumed, he has not healed. So the kinsman redeemer must be the near or closest relative to the person who needed redeeming. That means that Christ must assume the nature of man that needed redeeming.
This was after the fall.
Right. Adam before the fall didn't need redeeming. I mean, it's a simple logic. So I want to look at these verses here. I mean, we know these, but I want to look at them just the same because it's always good to review where we get our theology. So let's go to Hebrews chapter 2, verses 14 to 18. For as much then as the children are partakers of flesh and blood, he also himself likewise took part of the same, that through death he might destroy him that had the power of death, that is, the devil. Now, this is the work of the Redeemer, to destroy the murderer, right? And deliver them who through fear of death were all their lifetime subject to bondage. For verily he took not on him the nature of angels, but he took on him the seed of Abraham. Wherefore in all things it behooved him to be made like unto his brethren, that he might be a merciful and faithful high priest in things pertaining to God, to make reconciliation for the sins of the people. For in that he himself hath suffered being tempted, he is able to succor them that are tempted. There is nothing that we have to endure that he has not experienced and can deliver us from. Then in Romans 8, verse 3, for what the law could not do, and that it was weak through the flesh, God sending his own Son in the likeness of sinful flesh, and for sin, condemned sin in the flesh. Now, Karl Barth, who was the great German theologian, said that this word flesh, sinful flesh, is the concrete form of human nature marked by Adam's fall. That's what the Greek word means. You can't get around it any other way. So it says here that what the law could not do and that it was weak through the flesh, God sending his own Son in sinful flesh, not unlikeness, but like, he met sin where it was.
So if he had not taken or assumed that nature, then he wouldn't have been nearest of kin. Right. It would have been impossible
Absolutely.
for him to be our kinsman redeemer.
That's right. Absolutely. That's the whole point I'm getting at here. So to understand the kinsman redeemer concept, he had to be the nearest of kin. He had to be corporate mankind.
Right. Mankind that mankind is.
Right. That's why he's called the last Adam. Adam fell, the last Adam comes along, steps in his shoes after he fell, does the work that Adam failed to do. Okay, Philippians 2, we're very familiar with this, so we'll just briefly go through it. Philippians 2, verse 5, let this mind be in you, which was also in Christ Jesus, who being in the form of God, he is literally God, but he thought it not robbery to be equal with God, because he was God. He is God. But he made himself of no reputation, and took upon him the form of a servant. That literally is slave. And he was made in the likeness of men. Not unlikeness, but like we read there in Romans 8, he took human flesh, fallen human flesh, the only kind of flesh there is. And being found in fashion as a man, he humbled himself and became obedient unto death, even the death of the cross. He had to die that death on the cross, accursed of God, to pay the penalty.
Yeah, we have to understand that because the Jews knew that if you died on the tree, you are gone. I mean, God totally forgot you. You are no longer in existence.
That's Deuteronomy 21, 22, and 23.
And if we don't understand that, then what's the cross? Because how many men died, how many people died on the cross, period?
That's right.
Roman years. This particular one was different.
That's right. The Pharisees knew that they had to put him on a cross in order for him to be cursed of God.
Right. And
If they had stoned him, which was the punishment for what they accused him of, blasphemy received stoning. They didn't want him stoned. They had to hang him on a cross because they knew Deuteronomy 21, verse 22 and 23, that said that anybody that was hung on a tree was cursed of God. And God would not hear that man's prayer.
right, because of what Caiaphas had said about one man for the
One man shall die for the whole nation.
nation.
That's right. The second point was the kinsman redeemer must have sufficient resources with which to pay the debt which was owed. Christ alone has sufficient assets to meet the demands of the broken law. It's his righteousness and his righteousness alone that can meet the just demands of the broken law.